The night was dark, the kind of storm that rattles old windows and makes the power flicker without warning. Jake sat quietly at his small kitchen table, his hands wrapped around a chipped mug of lukewarm coffee. Bills were scattered in front of him, each one screaming louder than the storm outside, each one reminding him of the life he was barely holding together as a single father. His daughter, Emily, had just fallen asleep in the next room, her tiny breaths the only reason Jake kept pushing forward despite the crushing weight of poverty and loneliness. He was exhausted, worn down by the world, and for a moment, he closed his eyes, wondering how much longer he could keep this up. That's when the knock came, sharp, desperate, echoing through the storm. Jake froze. Nobody ever came to his door this late, especially in weather like this. He thought about ignoring it, about pretending he wasn't home. But something inside him stirred, a whisper that told him to check. Slowly, with heavy steps, he opened the creaky door, and there they stood. Two young women, twins by the looks of them, their clothes soaked through, their arms wrapped tightly around themselves against the cold. Their eyes, wide with fear and exhaustion, met his, silently begging for mercy. Jake blinked, unsure if this was real or some cruel trick of the night. "Please," one of them finally whispered, her voice trembling. We've been turned away from every house. Could we stay here just for tonight?" Jake hesitated, gripping the edge of the door as the storm raged behind the girls. He wasn't a man with much to give, his fridge held little more than leftovers, and his wallet barely stretched to cover Emily's needs. Letting strangers in felt risky, even foolish. Yet as he looked at their shivering bodies and pale faces, something inside him softened. He knew what it felt like to be desperate, to knock on doors only to be turned away, to feel invisible to the world. "Come in," he said quietly, stepping aside. The twins hurried in, dripping water onto the worn rug, murmuring endless thank yous. Jake fetched an old blanket from the couch and draped it over their shoulders, noticing how their hands trembled not just from the cold but from something deeper, fear, perhaps, or exhaustion that went beyond one stormy night. He offered them the small comfort of a chair near the heater and poured them both steaming cups of tea. For a few moments, the only sounds were the wind thrashing against the house and the girls' soft sips. Emily stirred in her room, her sleepy voice calling, "Daddy." Jake went to check on her, introducing her shyly to the guests. Emily, with a child's natural warmth, immediately smiled and offered one of her stuffed animals to the strangers, as though to say, "You're safe here." The twins exchanged a glance, eyes glistening, clearly moved by such innocence. Jake didn't know who they were, why they had ended up at his door, or what they were running from, but he did know this: no one deserved to be left out in a storm. And so, for that one night, his small, broken home became a refuge. As the night wore on, the storm only grew fiercer, hammering the roof like a relentless drum. Jake sat with the twins at the kitchen table, the dim light casting long shadows across their tired faces. They slowly opened up, sharing pieces of their story. Their names were Lily and Claire, and though they didn't reveal every detail, Jake could sense their fear wasn't just about the weather. They mentioned trouble at a bus station, a man who wouldn't stop following them, and how door after door had been slammed in their faces until his was the last one they tried. Jake listened quietly, nodding, his heart tightening at the thought of his own daughter ever being so vulnerable. He didn't ask too many questions. Sometimes people needed shelter more than interrogation. Instead, he offered them a second helping of the simple dinner he had saved for tomorrow, macaroni and cheese from a box, with just enough for everyone to have a little. The twins smiled faintly, as if it was the best meal they'd had in days. Emily giggled as she showed them her favorite bedtime book, insisting Jake read aloud so their guests could listen. As his deep, calming voice filled the room, Jake noticed how the twins relaxed, their shoulders slowly easing, their eyes softening with gratitude. For one night, the storm outside didn't matter. Inside, in the warmth of that tiny house, they were safe, seen, and treated like family. Jake felt something stir within him, a quiet pride he hadn't felt in years. Despite his lack, he had still managed to give. Little did he know, the simple choice to open his door would change his life in ways he couldn't possibly imagine. Morning came softly, sunlight breaking through gray clouds as the storm finally calmed. Jake woke early, quietly making toast and eggs with what little he had left, wanting to give his guests a warm breakfast before they continued their journey. The twins looked different in daylight, less like desperate strangers and more like young women carrying heavy burdens. They thanked him repeatedly, their eyes lingering on Emily's laughter as she played with her cereal, and on Jake's tired but gentle smile as he served them plates. When it was time to leave, Jake walked them to the door, handing them an umbrella he could barely spare. "You don't owe me anything," he said when they tried to offer him money. "Just, take care of yourselves." The twins hesitated, visibly moved. One of them slipped a folded note into his hand before stepping out into the fresh, rain-washed morning. Jake unfolded it after they left. Inside were just a few words: "Thank you for treating us like people. You'll hear from us again." He tucked the note into his wallet, not really expecting to see them again. Days passed, and life returned to its familiar grind, work shifts barely covering the bills, nights filled with worry about Emily's future. Yet something had changed inside Jake. That night had reminded him of his own humanity, of the power of kindness even when you have little to give. Still, he never imagined that the knock on his door during a stormy night had set in motion a chain of events that would alter the course of his and Emily's lives forever, because those two strangers were not ordinary girls, and the world they came from was far beyond anything Jake had ever known. It was nearly 2 weeks later when the knock returned, this time in broad daylight. Jake opened the door cautiously, expecting a neighbor or perhaps the landlord with another notice. Instead, there they were, Lily and Claire, only this time they weren't soaked and trembling. They stood tall, dressed neatly, with a sleek black car parked at the curb. Jake's heart raced with confusion. Emily ran to the door, squealing with joy as she hugged them, as if they were long-lost family. "We told you we'd come back," Claire said softly, her smile carrying a weight of gratitude. Jake welcomed them in, though his nerves prickled with questions. Before he could speak, Lily placed an envelope on the table. "We need to be honest with you," she began, her voice steady but emotional. "That night, you didn't just shelter 2 lost girls. You sheltered us from a world we were too tired to face." Jake frowned, not understanding, until Claire added, "Our father is, well, he's a man of means. A millionaire. But wealth didn't protect us from pain. That night, we needed kindness more than comfort, and you gave it freely." Jake stared at them, stunned. Millionaire's daughters? It seemed absurd. He looked down at the envelope, then back at them. "Why me?" he asked quietly. "Because you opened your door when no one else would," Lily replied. "And because we want to change your life the way you changed ours." Jake's rough hands trembled as he picked up the envelope, unaware that inside lay not just money, but an opportunity that would rewrite the future he thought was forever limited. With hesitant fingers, Jake opened the envelope. Inside was a cashier's check large enough to pay off his debts, cover Emily's schooling, and give them a fresh start. His breath caught as he tried to speak, but words failed him. For years he had carried the weight of scraping by, always one step away from losing everything, and suddenly, hope lay in his hands. "I can't accept this," he whispered, shaking his head, tears threatening. "I don't deserve it." But Lily reached across the table, placing her hand gently over his. "You do," she said firmly. "Because real wealth isn't measured in dollars, it's measured in humanity. You showed us love when you had nothing to gain. Now it's our turn to give back." Claire nodded, her eyes glistening. "This isn't charity, Jake. It's a thank you, for reminding us what truly matters." Emily climbed into his lap, hugging him tightly as if sensing the enormity of the moment. Jake finally let the tears fall, holding his daughter close, overwhelmed by gratitude and disbelief. For the first time in years, the crushing weight lifted. His little home, once a place of struggle, now felt filled with possibility. As the twins left, promising to stay connected. Jake stood at the door, the cool breeze carrying away the last remnants of despair. He realized that compassion, simple, quiet compassion, had changed everything. What began as an act of kindness to two strangers had turned into a miracle that would define his family's future. And as Emily tugged his sleeve, whispering, "Daddy, everything's going to be okay now," Jake finally believed her. Because kindness had come full circle, and in its wake, it left a life transformed.